Hello everyone, we're continuing our series of shows. With us in the studio is Dr. Michael Laitman. Hello. And today we'll talk about a comparative analysis between Kabbalah and science, and philosophy and psychology. Please, go ahead. As Bala Sulam writes in his article about Kabbalah and contemporary sciences, what is actually the significance of the wisdom of Kabbalah for our generation? The significance of the wisdom of Kabbalah is not theoretical, but strictly practical. As humanity approaches a state where it no longer knows how to advance, and what does it exist for altogether, what's moving it, etc., then humanity becomes needy of the wisdom of Kabbalah. Before that, it doesn't need it, and also the wisdom of Kabbalah does not offer itself to humanity. It's somewhere there. It exists inside of mankind in this state of standby. And it's being developed by Kabbalists. It's being prepared to be publicized, disseminated, implemented. Today, we have reached such a state where we're actually in that state, meaning we're disclosing Kabbalah to the world. But before our time, it was practically hidden. As Bala Sulam writes that Kabbalah actually reveals the Creator to every person in our world. Right. Before that, people didn't need the revelation of the Creator. They don't need it today as well. A person, he doesn't need the truth. He needs something that will give him a kind of soothing, satisfaction, an answer to the little questions that he has in life. I don't think someone would be opposed to the revelation of the Creator where they do know that it's possible to reveal Him. No, even those that come and you tell them about the possibility of revealing the Creator, the higher world, the next degree of the development of humanity, still, of them remain practically only a few percent. Maybe the Creator that Kabbalah offers people don't want. Yeah, probably that's the answer. On the other hand, Kabbalists say that Kabbalah is a method for building the correct, proper relations between people, relationships between people, and in those relations, the higher force reveals himself. Yeah. And today, practically any economist will tell you, or political figure will tell you that what people are lacking today is connection. Kabbalah, it reveals to us the nature of man. How can we correct this nature in order to turn from egoists that completely reject, negate any good relations between us in the family and society, between governments, nations, etc. Meaning, we don't see it. We see that we're incapable of tuning ourselves into any kind of good relation with others. When society, when the world comes to this understanding, then they become needy of Kabbalah, and Kabbalah reveals to them a force that is hidden in nature that you can draw from nature, with the help of which we can change ourselves and make ourselves into good, friendly, kind people who aspire for mutual connection between us. This is actually the realization, implementation of Kabbalah in our world, in its current state. And the revelation of the Creator, what we talked about previously, is the revelation of the force of good between us. The relations between us, that's the Creator. Meaning above the egoistic force, we rise above the egoistic force, that thanks to it we actually develop. Then above it, we build the altruistic force that is its opposite, and then in that sandwich between them, we reveal the Creator as a force. Right. That connects these two contradicting good and bad forces. Okay, that's the wisdom of Kabbalah. Now, I want to ask about the difference between Kabbalah and other sciences. I chose a few postulates. First of all, Kabbalists, they explore the world not through their ordinary five senses, but with a new tool called a screen. Right. An anti-egoistic quality that they develop in themselves precisely by studying Kabbalah. And every person there is the seed of the quality of bestolen love toward others, but it's only a seed, it's a small point, so-called point in the heart. In the egoistic heart, there's a small point that is the seed, the embryo of our next future altruistic state. The wisdom of Kabbalah explains how to develop that point, allow it to develop like a seed that you can sow in the ground, and it starts growing like a seed. So this is what the wisdom of Kabbalah explains about. So we explore our earthly sciences through our ego, through our heart, subjectively, yes. And the wisdom of Kabbalah explains how in that seed that awakens in us, only in those that it has awoken, how inside one's own ego, like we saw a seed in the ground, the same way we can sow our altruistic seed in the ego, and thanks to it, in the correct connection between them, this seed will grow and will give us a new altruistic force. So we can explore with the help of the wisdom of Kabbalah or this screen, this additional organ, a reality that is not distorted by my ego. Right. Meaning the true reality. Yes. That appears in my ego. Okay. The next difference is that Kabbalah says that the object of its research is the innermost part of man, which is the intention, meaning no other science explores the intention. Feelings, emotions, you have that in psychology too. Human reactions, desire. Psychology also explores the intention, but it's not a science, because we don't have the actual ability to measure, to weigh psychological parameters, to compare them. The other thing is that Kabbalah is a science about the intention. It gives us a tool altogether to a completely different approach to man. We appreciate a person according to his actions, according to the results. And Kabbalah appreciates or evaluates a person according to his intentions, and this is a vast difference in our world. With good intentions, I can do some bad deeds, and vice versa. Bad intentions might cause good deeds. In short, the most important for us is to discover a person's intention, because his intention is the man himself. His actions, his desires, they don't depend on him. They appear in him gradually as a result of his physical development. The next difference is, as Kabbalists say, that it's necessary to do only half of the work. Meaning in science, a person, he researches for 20, 30 years, but he does it himself. Even in psychology, people try to somehow change themselves, but in Kabbalah it said that we need to do only half the work, and the rest will be done by the light. What does it mean? The thing is that we are under the influence of the forces of nature, and once we start revealing our intentions, then we see a completely different picture of nature. That's like on a computer screen, showing us not the world of forces, but the world of intentions, and then we see that all of humanity, without exception, is in the egoistic intention to receive. Each thinks only about himself, meaning this kind of absolutely monotonous, dark screen. Each thinks only about himself and how to get everything at the expense of others, and this is how we are tied by these contradicting forces. And currently, this is what comprises humanity. And Kabbalah says that we need, to the contrary, above these egoistic intentions of ours, we need to create the next level of intention, to love, to help, to bestow, to be connected with one another. And that is possible only with the help of the higher force, the Creator. And thus, Kabbalah points to a person in what way to correctly aspire for the correct intentions of bestowing love, and this way reveals the Creator. So if I correctly understand, a person can't change himself. In no way. He can only come to a state where he wants to do it, but he can't, and some external force starts working on him and changing him. And that is the force of the Creator that is revealed to him. And it is a science, yes, because we're dealing with forces. The force of intention, the force of desire, these are forces. And if 100 people do it, they too, every person can reveal for himself this entire picture, because he is an equal member of this enormous connection of all of the egoistic particular desires. And above all of them, we need to create altruistic desires. So in conclusion, as we said, Kabbalah is a science, and in any science, there are certain stages of development. If I correctly understand, we can divide the spiritual development of humanity into 3 stages. The first is the unconscious, a natural development of tens, hundreds of thousands of years, like we see that man has developed, his psychology, reaction to different influences over him. The second stage begins when in a person awakens what we call, or Bala Sulam calls, the point in the heart. Yeah, meaning it's a certain desire where a person wishes to understand the primordial reason for his existence. And the third stage where he already acquires the screen, the anti-egoistic quality, and starts exploring the world that exists outside of him. Right. And then let's move on to Kabbalah and psychology. Let's start with that. Bala Sulam, he related with lots of respect to material psychology. Why? Because on the level of our world, it explains everything correctly. Only along with the other problems of our world, it reaches a dead end. We see that what can we do about our contemporary psychology? We study man. We study him with all the means that we have. We're willing to invest billions into this in terms of means and effort, and still we won't get anything, because we cannot depict to ourselves man's inner world. Psychology is like a tool with the help of which I wish to open up a person, to look into him, dig in like into a computer or motor or something, and find out, how does he work? How can I correct, fix him, repair him, adapt him to myself, understand what could be the problems, etc. Psychology doesn't help me in that. It stopped at the level of, suppose, like, it's like where you try with the help of a hammer and a screwdriver, you try to delve into some kind of contemporary electronic mechanism. I can't work that way. And we can't work in any other way, because our ego, with the help of which we look at man and explore him, it is very one-sided, single-sided, very low, such that it doesn't allow us to understand the stimuli, the resources, reasons of the problems of man. It doesn't allow us to. We see that neither for children, nor for grown-ups, nor for married couples, nor for anything. We do not understand people. We can't figure them out. That's the main problem of our society. We don't know what we need. And here, obviously, the wisdom of Kabbalah, it completely replaces psychology. It uses it wherever possible, but it develops it further, where psychology itself cannot develop itself. And thus, we welcome materialistic psychology, but to develop it further is something that we already need to do in the realm of Kabbalah. By the way, many people that studied psychology, continue studying psychology, take interest in Kabbalah. Yeah, naturally. I'm sure that in the future, all psychologists and philosophers, but psychologists for sure, will come to the wisdom of Kabbalah, because here they will find answers to the questions that psychology can't give them. And still, if we look at the difference between Kabbalah and psychology, first of all, it's the goal, the tools, and the method of attainment. And let's start with the difference in goals. The purpose of Kabbalah is to reveal the Creator to His created beings in this world. Right, but it's not that it's about the revelation of the Creator Creator. It's not that anyone has to. The thing is that if we wish to develop a person as much as possible, open him up, fulfill his complete inner potential that's negative with something positive, then that would be the revelation of the Creator inside the person. And as I understand, psychology is a science that studies the behavior, the psychological processes that people and animals undergo with the purpose of making life more comfortable. On the level of our life, on the level of our animate existence, where a person exists and cherishes only his animate body and not beyond it in any way, then psychology can help him in something. But we see ourselves from our problems that they're not resolved with the help of psychology. I can go to a psychologist. That fashion is over already, where a person has to go at least twice a week to his shrink and lay on the couch where he listens to his different troubles. People still go. They do. But because there's no other way for a person to somehow calm himself down, orient himself, it's especially those people that don't want to take any sedatives, and this is their special form of relation to life. That they need a mom, they need these kind of soothing talks. It's very developed in the US especially. But this is how it was. I don't think that it continues with the same intensity. Okay, difference in tools. We know that psychology is based on a person's work with his consciousness, subconsciousness, self-persuasion, visualization, positive thinking. Yeah, many different methods. We're not specialists, we'll not delve into that. Well, what's special about the tools in Kabbalah is that in Kabbalah, we simply scrutinize what do we need to change, and then, as we said, we simply draw upon ourselves those forces that exist in the source texts, in the books. By the way, in Kabbalah, source texts are a necessary means for advancement. You don't have something like that in psychology. In psychology, you need a psychologist, and that's enough. In Kabbalah, you need a teacher, you necessarily need books, because in the book there's the force, and you need a group. Well, in psychology, you have group psychology as well. So that's the difference in tools. And the third is the difference in the methods of attainment. As we already said, that the method itself in Kabbalah, what's the difference between the group method in Kabbalah and in psychology? The thing is that the method itself is completely opposite. A group is necessary in order for me to completely connect with it, adhere to it, enter them and dissolve among them, and instead of myself, to envision the group as the whole, and by no means myself. And then in that group, I'll discover the general force that ties us together, that existed in the group before that too, only I couldn't discover it. Now I begin to reveal it in our full connection, and that force is called Creator. This is what Kabbalah says about its realization. And Kabbalah does not pursue these goals whatsoever, but sheer work in the group in order for a person to somehow get rid of his special disturbances, fears, habits, fears, habits, disappointments of different kinds. And what happens in Kabbalah, people are also united around one idea. No, I dissolve myself in the group. I want to be lost, so to speak, among them. I want to get rid of my sense of self in the group, so that the group will become my I. It's a completely different level of thinking. It's a completely different level of feeling and thinking. Also in Kabbalah, the relationship between the teacher and the student is very important. I think that it's not the same in psychology. No, in psychology you have that too. A person becomes tied to a psychologist. But in Kabbalah, his connection to his teacher is necessary in order for him to listen to him and for him to try and nonetheless realize that he hears from his teacher that might be not completely realistic. Meaning, a teacher in Kabbalah, it is sort of a problem for the student. He needs to accept him and follow him against his common sense. And in psychology, it's more clear. Both the psychologist and the patient are on the same egoistic level. And in Kabbalah, they're on two separate levels. The teacher on the spiritual one, and the student on the corporeal. And thus, here you have a problem. Is it correct that all the advice given by the instructor, teacher in the wisdom of Kabbalah is unclear to the student? Their inner meaning obviously is unclear, because the student is still not on the level of the teacher. And in psychology, it could be understood, because the psychologist is all in all a human being. And one can also study psychology himself and understand where does it come from, and what great psychologists talk about it, etc. It's all within the framework of common sense and desire psychology. And Kabbalah is beyond the boundaries of reasonable thoughts and desires, but in only what's called faith above reason. Psychology exists for about 150, 200 years. Yeah, it's especially Freud. And Kabbalah exists for 5,700 years, more or less, so has much more experience. And another element, if we're talking about methods of attainment, in Kabbalah, the source text, written by Kabbalists even a few thousands of years ago, plays a very important role. These sources are unchanging. The thing is that if we take a psychological book, and whatever, psychology, politics, you name it, whatever humanity does, besides mathematics, physics, sciences about nature. If we're talking about the science that deals with man, man changes. And thus, all the sciences that talk about man, they change too. And thus, a psychology that you had 150 years ago, or a philosophy from 300, 500, or 1,000 years ago, obviously, we can't talk about it today. If ancient Greek philosophers talked about the soul, that it's something that you breathe in and breathe out, etc., this type of primitive thinking about the soul, even though that they were great scholars of their time, but this is what they thought. Then today, obviously, psychology thinks differently. And Kabbalah doesn't. It operates according to the very same tools, instruments, and same objects as before. So if you meet a Kabbalist who lived 2,000-3,000 years ago, it's a present. Or 500 years ago, we'd find a common language. Not only that we'd find a common language, we'd study from him. What, previously the Kabbalists were more developed? We would have had a common language. We would have had a complete understanding of one another. And it would have been interesting to talk to that person. Besides that, we would have actually had a common language to speak. If you take a Frenchman from today, if he were to speak to a Frenchman that lived 500 years ago, they wouldn't understand each other. Take the Cyrillic writing, for example. Look at those letters, these kinds of circles, and you have nothing similar there to the contemporary alphabet. And Hebrew didn't change? Of course not. We read it all. And besides that it didn't change, there are rules, laws according to which each letter needs to be specifically in a certain way, and the way it's sketched is a result of the spiritual forces. And the combination of letters, these aren't letters, these are symbols that express a person's feelings in attainment of the Creator. Thus, it's all unchanging. And anyway, neither the books, nor the texts, nor anything. Okay, we don't have much time left, so let's talk a bit about the comparative analysis between Kabbalah and philosophy. I think 5 minutes is enough, because today, actually, people's attitude towards philosophy is not that great. And it's amazing, because still in my days, when I started studying 50, 60 years ago, really back then there was a positive attitude towards philosophy. Of course. Philosophy. When I studied, practically no one studied philosophy anymore. Well, only if you need it for the diploma or something. Yeah. Kabbalah and philosophy. These are two systems that explore the world and man that come to answer the same question, the purpose of our existence. What's interesting for us is how philosophy appeared. I don't know if it's exactly precise, but the German humanist and scholar Jan Reichling writes somewhere in the 15th, 16th centuries that my teacher, Pythagoras, the father of philosophy, most probably took his knowledge not from the Greeks, but from the Jews. And he was the first to translate the word Kabbalah, unknown to his contemporaries, into the word philosophy. Right, Jan Reichling wrote about it. The Greeks studied from Kabbalists. Yeah, still back in the days of the prophets, Jewish prophets. This was somewhere in the 7th, 8th century BC. It's the era of the prophets, and back then the nations already related between them, and the Greeks studied. Yeah, back then everyone was accepted. Whoever wants to, please, it's the same Babylon. Those who joined Abraham, great. Those that didn't can join later on. Kabbalah was open to everyone. No one closed anything. So the difference between Kabbalah and philosophy is that Kabbalah does not take into consideration abstract concepts like in philosophy, things like soul, creator, etc. Because philosophy does not have a clear tool, instrument as to how to approach man, start digging in him, his desires, being able to create his desires, intentions, what intentions are there for myself, for the sake of others, what's the difference, how to come out of myself into others, elevate, lower my desires, how to work, when you're in ascent or in descent, in your desires or intentions, etc. It's an entire inner spiritual psychology. Can we say that philosophers are those people that studied from Kabbalists, but did not reach the attainment of the Creator, did not acquire the screen, but simply acquired knowledge, and thus developed it into something called philosophy? Right. Since they could not attain the higher world and the Creator, they started developing it in the direction of, so to say, logical thinking. And from there, everything went in every which direction. And thus, of course, philosophy is not a science. Philosophers become only those people that want to somehow pass their life in some futile contemplations. What do Kabbalists say? That unless you attain the Creator, you can't philosophize about this concept. You can't understand Him, or the soul, for example. Bala Sulam writes that the unattainable can have no name, where a name implies a beginning of some sort of attainment. Meaning, if you don't attain, as Bala Sulam writes about communism, for example, a special kind of relation between people, or socialism before it was implemented in society, and people already start envisioning what kind of relations will there be in such a structure, obviously we see what it brought to. Kabbalists say that there's no connection between the spiritual and material world. However, Kabbalists say that there is. Meaning there's no connection between the spiritual and corporeal world. The connection between the spiritual and the material goes through man. Physically outside of us, nothing exists altogether. The physical. Maybe that's the main difference between how Kabbalists see the world and philosophers. Philosophers say that the world exists in and of itself. Kabbalists say that the world in and of itself does not exist. It's only what a person perceives and feels inside himself and what he lives with. Another difference in terminology in Kabbalah, the soul is the intention. To receive not for yourself, for your own sake. And in philosophy, yeah, it's some kind of existing entity, substance that exists outside of man, can enter him, exit him, something foggy. Also, the realm of research. Kabbalah says that you can research only matter and form dressed in matter, but abstract form and essence is something that you cannot explore or research, if you can explain. What is there to explain? It's clear. Matter and form dressed in matter. These are things that we can realistically feel and work with, and abstract form is something that we can't research or explore. We don't have the tools for it. And essence, that's something that is altogether hidden from us, meaning it's not attained by us in our current state. Later on, maybe, possibly, in the measure of our connection with the Creator, we'll attain everything. Meaning, for example, a quality in a person like a lie. We can explore it only if it's related to the person, not separately. The same with soul, Creator, and everything else. Yes. Meaning, you can explore the Creator only when that quality is dressed in man and not in an abstract form. Right. That's why the Creator is called Bo'eh, from the words Bo'eh, come and see, come and reveal. In Kabbalah, there's this formula called, from your actions do we know you, meaning in the measure of our equivalence of form, Kabbalists can explore only in the measure to which we feel the actions of the Creator upon us. From these actions, we perceive Him. We can't talk about Him outside of His actions. So, I think it's more or less clear. Today we talked about a comparative analysis between Kabbalah and science, and philosophy, and psychology. Thank you very much. Till next time, all the best.